Before 2013, American Airlines and U.S. Airways were two very different carriers, each with its own unique identity and legacy, shaping the U.S. skies in distinct ways. Their stories, while intertwined by competition, were marked by contrasting strengths and ambitions. American was the legacy giant, an airline with a deep-rooted history stretching back to the earliest days of commercial aviation. With its iconic silver livery and eagle logo, American symbolized prestige, innovation, and global reach. Its vast network spanned continents, connecting major cities across the world and setting industry standards for decades. U.S. Airways, meanwhile, was the scrappy survivor, an airline forged through a series of mergers and reinventions. It built its strength on the East Coast and in the Caribbean, thriving in competitive markets and adapting quickly to industry changes. Its roots traced back to smaller regional carriers, giving it a reputation for resilience and adaptability. American dominated international routes, flying to Europe, Asia, and Latin America, while U.S. Airways excelled at connecting smaller U.S. cities and providing vital links for regional travelers. Their route maps reflected their priorities, one global, the other regional, but essential. Their corporate cultures reflected their histories. American's tradition, formality, and scale stood in contrast to U.S. Airways' nimble, integrated, and often more informal approach. Employees at each airline took pride in their distinct identities, from uniforms to customer service philosophies. For travelers, this meant choosing between two very different experiences and networks. Whether it was the promise of international adventure with American or the convenience of regional connections with U.S. Airways, passengers often had strong preferences. These rivals fiercely competed for passengers, lucrative business contracts, and airport dominance. Their competition drove innovation, pricing strategies, and loyalty programs, shaping the choices available to millions of travelers. But as the airline industry faced new challenges and opportunities, the landscape was about to change dramatically, setting the stage for a merger that would not only unite these two carriers, but also reshape the future of American aviation. What forced these rivals together? Financial pressure and fierce competition. By the early 2010s, American was struggling. High costs, aging planes, and bankruptcy in 2011. Meanwhile, Delta and United had already merged, leaving American and U.S. Airways at a disadvantage. U.S. Airways, led by Doug Parker, saw opportunity, combine its domestic strength with American's global network. The merger promised a lifeline for American and a shot at the top for U.S. Airways. Together, they could create the world's largest airline, optimizing routes and gaining negotiating power. The stage was set for a historic deal. Announcing a merger is easy, at least that's how it looks from the outside. The cameras flash, executives smile, and the headlines talk about a new era. But behind the scenes, the real work is just beginning, and the path ahead is anything but simple. Making a merger happen is the real challenge. It's a process filled with uncertainty, tough decisions, and countless obstacles. Teams work late into the night, facing setbacks and disagreements as they try to bring two massive organizations together. U.S. Airways' Doug Parker had to win over American's creditors, management, and labor unions. Each group had its own priorities and concerns, and Parker needed to build trust and find common ground to move forward. After months of negotiation, the U.S. Department of Justice stepped in, worried about reduced competition. The government's intervention threatened to derail the deal, forcing both airlines to rethink their strategy and make new concessions. To address these concerns, the airlines agreed to give up valuable slots and gates at key airports, selling them to low-cost carriers to preserve competition and satisfy regulators. This was a major compromise, but it was necessary to keep the merger alive. With regulatory approval finally secured, the merger officially closed in December 2013. It was a historic moment, but it was only the beginning of a much larger journey. Integration began, repainting planes, merging reservation systems, and blending corporate cultures. Every department, from IT to HR, had to adapt to new systems and ways of working. The process was massive and complex, taking years to complete. Thousands of employees were involved, each playing a role in building the new airline from the ground up. Every detail mattered, from technology to employee handbooks, from flight schedules to customer service policies. Nothing could be overlooked if the new airline was to succeed. The journey to a single airline had officially begun, marking the start of a new chapter in aviation history, one built on determination, compromise, and the relentless pursuit of unity. The new American Airlines changed the game for employees, travelers, and the industry. Employees faced both opportunity and uncertainty as seniority lists and cultures merged. Travelers saw gradual changes, mixed crews, new routes, and loyalty programs combined for more options. The merger cemented the big three legacy carriers, American, Delta, and United. While some worried about less competition, The new scale allowed investments in planes, lounges, and technology, the biggest milestone merging the passenger service systems in 2015, creating a seamless experience. The result? One website, one app, and a vast unified network. American Airlines had truly become one. Beyond the headlines and press releases, the merger was, at its core, a story of people, of transformation, uncertainty, and resilience. For thousands of employees, it meant more than just a new logo or a different uniform. It was about adapting to change, learning to trust new colleagues, and finding their place in a rapidly evolving company. Repainting hundreds of planes was a massive, symbolic project. Heritage liveries slowly disappeared, replaced by a new identity. Each brushstroke marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, as familiar colors and logos gave way to a unified brand. The final Cactus call sign flight in 2015 marked the end of an era for U.S. Airways. For many, it was an emotional farewell, a moment to honor decades of memories, friendships, and shared experiences in the skies. Integrating technology was the biggest risk. Reservation system failures could have caused chaos. Behind the scenes, IT teams worked around the clock, running simulations and preparing for every possible scenario, knowing that even a small glitch could disrupt travel for millions. Thanks to years of meticulous planning and tireless teamwork, the transition went smoothly, avoiding disaster. The successful cutover was a testament to the dedication and expertise of countless employees who worked behind the scenes. Blending cultures was tough. Americans' tradition met U.S. Airways' scrappy style. Employees had to bridge differences in work habits, values, and even language, forging new relationships while honoring their roots. Training sessions and informal gatherings became opportunities to share stories, break down barriers, and build trust. These moments, though sometimes awkward, were essential in creating a sense of unity. Management, mostly from U.S. Airways, launched listening tours to build a new identity. They met with frontline staff, heard concerns, and worked to shape a culture that respected both legacies. Seniority integration remained contentious, but efforts to unite the workforce were crucial. Negotiations were difficult, but open dialogue and compromise helped move things forward. The merger's success depended on people adapting, collaborating, and letting go of old rivalries. It was about building something new together, even when it wasn't easy. In the end, it was a human story as much as a business one, a story of perseverance, adaptation, and the power of coming together to create a new future. By 2025, the American-U.S. Airways merger stands as a landmark in aviation. It created a stable, globally competitive airline, investing billions in new aircraft and passenger experience. The careful integration became a model for future mergers, avoiding the chaos of past failures. For travelers, the legacy is mixed. Less competition on some routes, but a vast, seamless network. The Big Three now define U.S. air travel, competing on global reach and loyalty perks. The merger transformed two distinct airlines into a single powerhouse, stabilizing the industry. Sometimes coming together is the only way to keep flying high.